Okay, so the first book I'm going to look at is Before Ever After, The Lost Lectures of Walt Disney's Animation Studio. Published last year, and I think it's really, really a great book. I'd almost think about it as kind of a continuation or an extra section of the Illusion of Life book, in that it kind of covers the history of Disney, the early days, and it also covers a lot of lectures that were given internally, both by people who worked there and by people they got in to give lectures on different subjects to the animators as they were working and developing their process and their skills. So you won't find a huge amount of photographs. There are some lovely photographs in it, particularly towards the beginning of it. You know, photos of the studio itself, photos of the various people that were involved. You know, there's some lovely artwork, some lovely animation drawings here and there as well. But the bulk of it really, though, is a reprint, like literally reprints of lectures, like these kind of things, that were handed out in the studio as they were working. As I say, some of them were from animators who were working there, who kind of worked their way up the ranks and had something to teach the younger animators. And some of them then were for people outside the studio who Walt got to come in and talk to people like Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect, people from quite a lot of different disciplines. And it's quite interesting to read some of those and also to kind of get a sense of how they really didn't close themselves off to any sort of influence. You know, they got basically the leaders in whatever field was interesting at the time, and got those in to give talks to both to inspire the animators, I suppose, and to give them, you know, a broader outlook on things. There are a couple of lectures where you kind of see people coming in who don't really have that much to teach the animators, but I think for most of them, really though, really good information. And what's really interesting about it is that they're actually printed. They're directly, you can see here, they've got spelling mistakes, they've got scribbles, notes on the side of them, and sometimes the typing in the original document is a bit rough. You could argue that maybe they could have reprinted these, and neatened them up for a kind of modern audience, but I think they made the best call really in actually printing them out as they were. So it really gives you a sense that you're almost reading the original documents. It's as close as you'll get to that. And it's really, really interesting. Like some of the most interesting ones I thought were the ones where the internal animators were talking and teaching the younger animators about different subjects, and also the ones from Walt where he was kind of discussing what he wanted to see more of from the animators. We all know the animation principles, we've all studied those, but this is actually, it's kind of really cool to see them actually coming up with these principles as they're working, as they're kind of developing the art form. And they really go into depth in some of them. Like we all know, for example, the idea of the principle of anticipation. But what's really cool in this is to see them actually discussing anticipation to a really deep level, to where, like, at one point they're talking about the sea, like the ocean. Does a wave in the ocean anticipate before it strikes? That kind of thing. Really, really in depth. And as I say, the notes from Walt to the animators are quite interesting, quite illuminating as well. They get quite repetitive, to be honest. Like, there are times when you can see him repeating the same thing quite a lot, asking for the animators to do the same kind of thing over, and asking them to consider things that they're not thinking about. And you can almost say, well, that's a bit repetitive. Why do they print those all? But I think it kind of brings home the point that these are really vital points he wants the animators to think about, and it's kind of stuff that we should all be thinking about. Depending on where you work, you may have good people guiding you, or you may be a freelancer like me who doesn't get as much feedback. So I think it's great to have these hands-on notes from the experts who are pushing people at the top of their game to do even better work, because it really shows you what you need to focus on. So that's pretty much the book in a nutshell. As for who I'd recommend it for, I think really it's more for somebody with a reasonable bit of experience, who wants some food for thought, who wants some inspiration, who wants like a kind of a little bit of a history to how the animation principles are come up with, and there's some really deep information here. I don't think it would be necessarily that good for a beginner. I think it's it's not going to give you 100 ways to do a walk cycle like, say, the Animator Survival Kit will, and it's not going to start you off assuming you know nothing. It's going to be straight into what they're really thinking about. So I think for a more experienced animator who's already been working for a while, it's a fantastic read. It really kind of goes really deep into a few subjects, and it's beautifully printed, I think, and some of the photos are really lovely. So I'd highly recommend it.